Wired into technology transformation, this is the Digital Bulletin podcast.
Hello and welcome along to episode 13 of the Digital Bulletin podcast. Thank you, listener, for once again giving up your time for us. Making it all worthwhile is our esteemed panel, this week consisting of Digital Bulletin CEO Romilly Broad.
Hello.
And a very special guest, Martin Stevenson from Prism.
Good morning, Ben.
It's great to have you on, Martin. Now, Martin is head of CMT EMEA for Prism. Obviously, Prism being one of the leading providers of robotic process automation software and other snazzy automation technologies. Martin, maybe tell us a bit more about what head of CMT EMEA means in practice.
Yeah, so CMT stands for Comms, Media and Technology. So basically, I'm the industry lead in Prism in Europe, Middle East and Africa, responsible for all of our business in those industries.
Fantastic. So Martin is here for a reason. He and Prism were heavily involved in our Digital Bulletin case study with Telefónica Spain. And we're going to chat all about it on today's pod. We also have an exclusive interview with Glasswall's Robbertse on a hot trend in enterprise security. But before all of that, here's some news. This month in the tech world, COVID-19 has continued to bite. The organisers of Mobile World Congress announced that next year's event will be pushed back to late June. It was due to take place in March. Obviously, MWC was cancelled completely this year. I really feel for those events companies with all the uncertainty around at the moment. Elsewhere, Google's long wait goes on to have its acquisition of Fitbit rubber-stamped. EU antitrust regulators have promised to make their decision at the beginning of next year. Antitrust certainly seems to be the byword in technology right now. Also this month we have seen Nvidia make yet more aggressive moves. This time it has promised to revolutionize the processing capabilities of data centers with its new chipset. If you want to hear us debate Nvidia's proposed acquisition of ARM, then listen in to last month's episode of the Digital Bulletin podcast. In the last few weeks, we have also seen Twilio agree a $3.2 billion deal to buy data management specialist Segment. Nokia shift its entire IT infrastructure onto Google's cloud, and John McAfee arrested in Spain on charges of US tax evasion. That's an interesting one to finish on. Anyway, listener, you can get the original reporting on those stories and many, many more via the bulletin on digitalbulletin.com. But now let's get into it. And for this month's case study review, we're going to explore our project with Telefónica Spain. Now, we had the opportunity to interview Javier Magdalena Penilla, who is overseeing a sizable automation program at the telecoms giant. As we know, Martin has joined us to talk about Prism's role as a supporting partner for Telefónica. But first, let's hear from Javier himself. Now, the program stretches across many areas of Telefónica Spain's business, but as Javier explains in this clip, a lot of the focus so far has been on customer care in the company's B2B and B2C divisions.
We need to put complexity out of the relationship with the customer. We have a very clear standard for quality. We are very, very focused on the quality and the customer relation, and everything that we can do, reducing times, reduce errors, have a clear understanding of our customers, put the people in really added value tasks, eliminate low value added tasks. So this is why we put a lot of efforts in the customer care areas.
Martin, I'm going to bring you in here just to add a little more context, first of all. Maybe start by giving our listeners an idea as to the kind of scale Telefónica operates at in Spain, both in the consumer and enterprise spaces.
Yeah, sure. So Telefónica de España is the largest company within the Telefónica Group. And Telefónica Group is a global telco. I think they're the sixth largest by number of subscribers and by revenue globally. And in Spain, Telefónica de España is obviously the largest telco. They have more than 60% market share of subscribers, both landline and mobile. They're also the largest telco, but they're also the second largest company in Spain. and they've been around knocking on for 100 years. In terms of their B2B and B2C business, if we start with B2B, they are already a sizable technology company. They don't see themselves as a telco; they see themselves as a tech company, and they're in the top 5 in terms of technology providers in Spain. Revenues around about €3 billion. Obviously, all these numbers are public domain. But that's a sizable company, and of that €3 billion plus revenue, only 1 billion approximately comes from telephony. The rest of it comes from services and products that they supply to their business clients. And again, they segment that into small and medium enterprise and large enterprises. In terms of B2C, I mentioned they're the largest provider of telephony to consumers, both fixed and mobile. The numbers that interest me around Telefónica Spain is well, they have over 100 million customers, by the way. Their contact centers at peak volume, dealing with more than 50,000 calls an hour, which is huge by anybody's imagination. And they're dealing with those calls from a number of contact centers across Spain, nearly 30, and they have more than 6,000 contact center agents. So you can see this is very large scale business, and also a very large scale responsibility to keep Spain talking.
Yeah, absolutely. Before we get into the detail of the automation program that the story is really about, Rom, I'm going to bring you in here. I mean, this kind of telling a story about a company of this size and this operation and of this importance to a country like Spain. This is like a big thing for Digital Bulletin, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're fortunate in that we get to spend quite a lot of time with folks operating at the coalface of change in really big organizations, where you might be spending a lot of time talking about technology, but really what you're talking about is the lives that technology ultimately impacts. Now, obviously, you think about that in the first instance by thinking about the consumers, the customers, the people who are provided services by those companies. But really, we're talking about how leaders in those organizations can engineer change using technology for thousands, often tens of thousands of people. I think 6,000 people just in the contact centers there, Martin was saying, and that's substantial. The happiness and the productivity of those people is critical to companies like Telefónica succeeding, particularly when under stress like they are right now. And RPA is one ingredient of a complex and really difficult and very expensive process to drive these organizations forward positively. Yeah, it's fascinating that we get to spend a lot of time with these folks and understanding just how they do that. And it's always about people, really, in the end. I know that Blue Prism's a technology company, but in the end, that's a means to an end. And the end is, the well-being and the happiness and the productivity and all the rest of it of actual people. Yeah,
and that's a point that Javier stresses in the case study as well. A lot of the focus did come onto culture and people, and we're going to move on to that in a minute. But Martin, bringing you back in here, that the automation program itself, obviously, we've established Telefónica Spain, the size of Telefónica Spain's operations. Just how ambitious, given your experience and Blue Prism's experience of automation programs, how ambitious was this initiative from Telefónica Spain?
Well, I think it's fair to say that it was highly ambitious. And when you look at not just the scale, but also the pace at which Telefónica Spain decided they wanted to transform their contact center operations in both B2C and B2B, it's kind of unprecedented. You would have looked at this in previous times and said, well, it's going to take 5 years and cost, I don't know, €500 million or something like that. They wanted to get these programs implemented and delivering value and returning ROI within the year. And so the combination of the scale and the pace have made it really combined the two projects, made it a program that's highly ambitious. We took a kind of a sense check of digital transformation projects around the world and just how ambitious this was. And we spoke to a number of companies who we all know about these things, because generally speaking they get to implement them. So we talked to a number of the advisory firms and a number of the big systems integrators, but we also spoke to a number of industry analysts, and all of them were united in their feedback that this is probably the largest digital transformation project in the world that's been delivered to date. And that's I think quite insightful, and also a little bit harrowing, where at the beginning when you're looking at that and saying, okay, well, it's the biggest ever. It's, it's something at this scale and more importantly at this pace hasn't been done before, we're right at the heart of it. So
maybe Martin, you can tell us a bit more about the kind of role Blue Prism has fulfilled in this partnership, and maybe bring in EY into it as well, because I know you and EY and Telefónica very much kind of working as one on this project.
So Telefónica Group said to all of the Telefónica companies, we want you to implement a digital transformation program in year and get results in year. You can pick the area of business that you want to focus on. We're not going to mandate that, because what Brazil is challenged with is different to what Spain is challenged with, is different to what UK is challenged with. So you decide what you're going to focus on, but basically focus on it, get it done, get in your ROI. And Telefónica Global had looked at the role of different types of technologies, the role that they can play in helping to deliver digital transformation. So our role is as part of the technology platform to deliver digital transformation. So that's not to say we're the only platform. This is a combination of different tools and techniques, different technologies, that when you put it all together, whether it be IVR, web services, microservices, chatbots, all of these different technologies, and what we bring, which is intelligent automation. When you bring all of that together, that's how you deliver an end-to-end digital transformation program. So our role is really to look at all of the processes that a company operates today, and to help them look at which processes should we continue to do, but do much faster with no errors and so forth. So which processes do we automate? Number two, which processes do we change? Do we simplify, then automate? And which processes do we stop doing? Which processes do we do because we've done them for 30, 40, 50 years, but they had no value? So our role in digital transformation is to provide the automation layer to bring about all of that process simplification, that process automation, and so forth, bringing in technologies like AI, machine learning, and others, and knitting it all together, and helping to deliver the outcomes in a very rapid time frame. And the way we do that is our technology is non-invasive, so you don't have to write lots of APIs and so forth. It's not a big IT program. We will deal with whatever interfaces you have today. Our technology is able to deal with them as they are today, and provide that automation, or if you like, re-automation layer that I just described. Provide that, and that's what makes it possible to deliver a transformative program at significant pace. In the case of Telefónica Spain, their B2B program delivered in 6 months, and delivered huge savings in operating costs, by the way. I mean, north of 30% operating costs in the savings in the first 6 months. These are massive. This is a massive impact, but doing it in the first 6 months, that was what was required, and that was the outcome they achieved. In B2C, the contact centers and so forth, they were able to deliver their new transformed solution that all the contact center agents are using for handling all of the calls coming into Telefónica Spain. They were able to deliver that in 12 months, which is unprecedented, but they did it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Rom, for those of us on the outside looking in at this kind of thing, it's that speed, isn't it, that especially when you're dealing with a project of this magnitude, it's that speed that is really difficult to imagine how you actually manage to achieve that. And as Martin said, this is a very complex transformation. It's not just one or two technologies. It's bringing in a number of different tools and practices. And so to achieve these things at the pace that we're speaking about here is something really quite astonishing, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a bit mad, really, isn't it? And I think Javier spoke about this in the interview. So if you go and read the meat of the article that we've got on our website right now, you can read him talking about this. I think obviously I'm a layman, I'm on the outside, but it seems to me like the key ingredient for Telefónica has been in achieving that pace and that scale has been the executive level leadership and momentum that was provided on that sense. I mean, we write about digital transformation a lot, and one of the things that people talk about a lot is how often digital transformation initiatives fail, and normally they fail because there isn't that kind of systemic drive from top to bottom throughout the hierarchy of an organization, led from the top, that's really providing that kind of drive and momentum and clarity of vision to make it succeed, particularly when it gets to the kind of the thorny change management end of things, when you put a lot of stuff in place and then you've got to get the fleshy emotional bags of flesh at the end of the process to actually use this stuff properly and not resist it, and and all that. It takes a really strong leadership, and Telefónica clearly have that, and that's why people like Javier and Blue Prism and all the other partners in that ecosystem have been able to come together. Presumably, I'm guessing here, Martin. You can tell me whether I'm barking up the wrong tree or not, but that seems to me to come through very strongly in what we've uncovered here.
No, I think you're right, and when I look retrospectively at how things played out, first of all, there was a very clear vision that the executive team and Javier had put together. They knew what they wanted. They had their metrics figured out. They knew if we tackle the problem of average handling time in our B2C business, if we reduce complexity significantly in our B2B business, we're going to get very positive outcomes that are going to enable us to reduce our operating costs without any negative impact on customer satisfaction. In fact, quite the opposite, very positive effect on customer satisfaction and on agent engagement, agent satisfaction, employee satisfaction. So they had that very clear vision and set of metrics. And then they worked with both EY and with Accenture to put that into a program plan with that super aggressive time frame. And I think that's where the benefit of partnering really shows it becomes crystal clear, because there was always a vision, there was always a plan, very detailed plan. Of course, as you move along the journey, things change. You might discover something that you hadn't anticipated before and you have to flex. But having a very clear plan that everyone's bought into, with high quality people and high quality methodologies from, in this case, those two fantastic systems integrators, they were able to keep the pace. Believe me, it was not a comfortable journey. It was highly challenging, sometimes fractious, long hours, long weeks, but everyone believed in the mission. Everyone bought into the vision. Everyone believed that it was attainable as a set of outcomes, and everybody absolutely, threw their whole weight to push the wheel along and to make it happen. So it is a team effort. You have to operate as a team. You have to help each other out. It's not an us and them. It can't. If you have an us and them, you spend more time arguing about what you disagree on than figuring out collaboratively how to move forward. So I think that was huge credit to Telefónica in the first instance for having that clarity of thought, that vision, and that determination. That absolute, failure was not an option. It absolutely had to happen. And then also, I take my hat off to EY and Accenture for them bringing their A team and really stretching the bounds of creativity and commitment, but ultimately making it happen. So it's there's an old saying, it's not how you start, it's how you finish, and it's finished, in terms of the first wave, really, really well. But trust me, it was it was tough along the way, but we got it done.
Yeah, it's really interesting that you say that, Martin, because Javier admitted in our interview that, of course, things haven't always been plain sailing. They never are with change programs of this size.
No.
In this clip, he talks about the 3 core principles that have kept Telefónica Spain on track, and starting, as you said, Rom, with buy-in right from the very top of the organization.
This is a very transversal program in our company. So we need a clear leadership of our executive committee. We need resources, the dedicated resources, but it's not only resources. We need the leadership of the executive committee. We need to have the end-to-end vision of the process. Next one, cultural change. Robotics, automation, and all these kinds of concepts sounds very well, but not everybody thinks that this is the way to doing the things. So we have to make sure that our employees, our people, feel that this is good for them. This is not only good for the results of the company. This is not a financial program. This is a program that needs to have a cultural change in our people. And the third one is to make understand the people that this is a journey. This is a continuing improvement program. We don't feel that we are in the end of the program. We feel that we are in a continuous way of doing the things and to simplify the things.
Rom, I'm going to pull out a quote from Javier. We have to make sure our employees, our people, feel that this is good for them. Now, obviously, we've touched on the culture side of things already, but let's just talk about that again and how often this is a core element of these stories, but especially when it comes to automation, isn't it? It really is like they go hand in hand.
I mean, well, I guess Martin deals with this topic all of the time, which is that if you're paying cursory attention to mainstream media headlines when it comes to automation, although frankly we haven't read much of that recently, have we? It's all been about other things, but there are these kind of dystopian ideas about how automation is going to be a bit like the miners crisis in the 1980s over here in the UK. So there's nothing. All that happens is a whole load of honest to goodness kind of salt of the earth people lose their jobs, and obviously it's not that at all. And it is about saying, look, actually, there's a bunch of stuff here we can do to remove time-consuming, tawdry, low-value tasks from people, so that they can do things that spend much more time doing things that are much more valuable, i.e., helping customers. However, you often have organizations, particularly big ones, where you've got a lot of people who've been doing a lot of things in the same way for a very long time, and you have to overcome those hurdles, and they are cultural hurdles, and they're not necessarily easy to overcome, and you have to encourage a certain mental agility and adaptability within people themselves in order for these things to succeed. I don't know if that chimes with your experiences with Telefónica, Martin.
No, it does. Completely. And you're right. It's something that we always have to factor into the conversations we have with our clients, because when we look at We have a lot of conversations about the future of work and what it's going to look like, and everyone knows exactly as it has done for the last goodness knows how many hundreds of years. We know that the nature of work is going to change. The great thing about automation, intelligent automation, is to the point you made, Ron. We're eliminating boring, repetitive work, which nobody gets any satisfaction from. I learned a new phrase last week, which I love. That phrase is boredom errors. People make boredom errors,
Right.
not deliberate error. They just get fed up with doing these things. But also they are asked to handle the complexity that an organization has built up over a number of years in order to kind of hide that from the client. And that's not what they signed up for. If you're a contact center agent, you didn't sign up for knowing how to access 15 or 20 different Telefonica systems to try and find out where a customer record is. It's something that you signed up to speak to people, to solve problems, to collaborate, to put a smile on the customer's face. That's why people do those jobs. Obviously also to earn a living, but if you can make that agent experience or salesperson experience a positive one, then you're going to get more productivity from people and so on. So the other thing is that we're seeing a lot of new jobs created by this kind of technology, because if you're able to take away those boring, mundane tasks and have the system deal with them, you're freeing people's time up to become creative and to actually use their brain, and that is having a positive effect. Telefonica have put these principles into their plan right from the start, and they talk about cultural change, and they talk about giving people these new skills. They're not looking to get rid of people. They're not looking to replace people with digital workers. They're looking to replace tasks, to move tasks from the person to the digital worker and give the person better things to do. And that's a very high priority for Telefonica. And the early feedback they're getting in terms of their employee satisfaction surveys and so forth, and anecdotal, is overwhelmingly positive. And people, rather than feeling devalued, they're actually feeling more valued. Because they're being given more interesting things to do, and they're being able to do the things they signed up for, and to do the things they enjoy, and to do the things they're good at. And that's got to be good. That's got to be. We talk a lot these days, especially during these COVID times, about people's mental health. And I don't have any scientific evidence for this yet, but I'd like to think that in some ways, moving these tasks or recasting the mix of tasks as to who does what. What tasks do the digital workers do and what tasks do the human workers do? I've got a feeling that that's going to have a more positive effect on people by and large, with regards to their enjoyment of their work and subsequently their mental health. I don't know, bold claim maybe, but it just sounds logical to me. That's but we'll see.
It seems to me as well, just to add to that, by liberate, if you're saying, right, we can chop. I'm not sure what the stats are Telefonica wise, but I think you mentioned 30% of low value tasks have been sort of taken away. And if you're liberating your people 30% of their time to exercise their brains in creative ways to solve problems for customers, you're also liberating that creativity on a mass kind of foundational level in areas of innovation and other things where human creativity is always going to win over. Doesn't matter how clever a robot is, it's always programmed. It's people that can innovate, and there's never been a more critical thing than innovation now to any company, especially when it's dealing with the challenges like pandemics, but also just purely competitive challenges. Innovation is kind of necessary now at extraordinary levels. No company can afford to rest on its laurels and assume that its market dominance will remain or whatever. And innovation comes in the end from people. Bright ideas come from people. Now, if you're saying, actually, do you know what? You're going to spend 30% less time just fighting with systems and spending that time thinking instead, then as a company overall, you're going to be reaping real rewards, you'd think. And so maybe that's going to be a long-term thing. Maybe you don't really see that, or you can't really measure that for a long time, but that's surely, I would imagine, an important part of it. And of course, people who are doing that feel a lot better about their day. More free to do those things.
Rom, just to throw this one at you, how close do you think we are to kind of breaking through or knocking down this notion that automation takes away people's jobs? And do you think the pandemic is kind of moving us more quickly towards an acceptance, a wider acceptance of automation as a technology?
I think I personally, and this is just informed by all of the reporting we do and all of the conversations we've had, I think we're just about there. I think it feels like a slightly anachronistic conversation now already, and that is because actually there are tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people potentially, most of them taken down this journey by Blue Prism, who are in a position to remember what it was like, who remember, particularly if they work in things like contact centers, who remember what it was like to sit there and say, sorry, the screen's just loading. Sorry, my system's just crashed. What they're actually telling you is, I'm trying to figure out which of like these 15 different things I need to patch into to try and answer really basic questions. They remember what that was like, and now they remember how much better it is. And they've also realized that they didn't lose their jobs, strangely enough. It's not just Telefónica that we've spoken to in this regard. It's other big companies, other big telcos as well. They haven't reduced their workforces. They've just made their workforces better and happier. And I think that that's not necessarily going to be true in every industry or every sector everywhere. But it's certainly, I think, going away, that kind of conversation. That's my own impression anyway.
I'd agree with you, Rom. And I want to go back to your point about innovation, because you reminded me of something that one of the senior leaders in Telefónica said to me about this program and what it meant and what our role was in helping them deliver it. And it's a great, I think it's a great quote, but it's a very evocative example. And they said, for us, for our digital transformation program, Blue Prism is the oxygen. And the oxygen in that, you make everything work. You give us that ability to get things done. But B, you give us the chance to breathe and think. And I think that's a great way to describe the change, if you like, that you can create. And that oxygen for the digital transformation, I think, is a great way of describing what we do. But your point about innovation is absolutely spot on. One of Telefónica's guiding principles in its program, and again, this is public domain. I actually saw this presented, and it's how I got involved with Telefónica in the first place. But their number one priority is always the customer experience, delivering the best customer experience, and to quote Javier again, to take the complexity away from the customer and make it easy for the customer to do what they want to do with you. But their second layer was around creating the opportunity and the capability to innovate. And innovation in the telco industry over the past 10 years, it's a slow moving thing. It can take 18 months to get a product from concept to market, and that's not good enough. The telco industry tells us that's not good enough. they need to get that from 18 months down to 18 days, and ultimately 18 hours. From concept to realization, to activation. That pace, the ability to innovate, and B, the ability to bring it to market quickly. That's not going to get done by having armies of people. It's not going to get done by having rigid processes that go back 50 years. It's a completely new mentality and a completely new approach, a capability, but also mindset.
Yeah.
The company, we hear companies talking about freeing the entrepreneur. You don't have to get your idea out there. You don't have to leave our company and go and set up on your own. You can be an entrepreneur inside, this telco, and we're going to give you the capability to think, create, and then bring things to market. Because we're going to be as nimble and as agile as you would be if you were in a startup. And I think that's a very, going again to culture. It's a very important cultural change that big telco. They have many very talented people that feel stifled and are not able to achieve their potential. And what we're doing here is giving them some tools, but also a mindset to be able to achieve their potential, to be the entrepreneur from within the telco.
Yeah.
And I think that's profoundly important.
Right, I need to wrap this section up there, guys. Digitalbulletin.com is where you can find the Telefónica Spain case study in its entirety, featuring interviews with Javier and Martin and EY as well, of course. Up next, we are moving on to content disarm and reconstruction technology, apparently the next big thing in enterprise security.
Find us as Digital Bulletin on LinkedIn, Facebook and Instagram, and at Digi_Bulletin on Twitter.
Now, listener, if you head over to digitalbulletin.com, you can find an exclusive article from Glasswall's Luke Robbertse on why content disarm and reconstruction technology is becoming a key layer of the security stack for many organizations. For this pod, I caught up with Luke to chat all things CDR, but I started off by asking him to tell us more about Glasswall.
Glasswall is a British-based cybersecurity company. And we focus on, protecting against the threat of malicious content inside digital documents. So in doing so, we sit in a category of cybersecurity called Content Disarm and Reconstruction, or CDR. We're one of the leading providers, mainly to the intelligence communities around the world. So, not only are we a supplier to the Five Eyes of intelligence, but we also do supply to the private sector for businesses and industries worldwide. Glasswall's vision statement, if you will, is safety and integrity through trusted files. And a bit more just about the company. We're still quite lean. We act as a startup, despite the initial research and development beginning, 10 to 15 years ago. We went to market about 5 or 6 years ago in the intelligence community, and then in the commercial space about 3 or 4 years ago. The product has been well received. It's been well validated, and now we continue to add to our product offering, so we can provide more ways to consume our solution, so we can get kind of a wider use within the market.
Now, obviously, Luke, our listeners come from kind of a broad range of sectors and industries. Maybe for the benefit of the listener, can you try and explain exactly what CDR technology is and what it delivers for enterprises?
So I think an easy way, Ben, to help understand, what CDR is to first tell you what it's not. So, content disarm and reconstruction does not attempt to detect malware or bad things inside a document. It has no concept of, signatures or definitions of malware or malicious content or malicious actors in a file. How it's different is that, Glasswall CDR will rebuild a file to a state of known good. So when we say a state of known good, any file type, for example, a PDF, will have a published specification. This is the structure of that document. So when our engine receives a file, we'll break it down, to the binary version of that file, and we'll put it back together according to the published specification of that that document type. So then the words like benign and disarm can come into play. And what Glasswall also does, which isn't really talked about or what Glasswall CDR does, which is not talked about too much in the article, is, in our solutions that we provide, we also offer a lot of risk management through a policy. So we allow users of our solution to calibrate the security, the level of security that they want, and align it with operations through that ability to manage their risk. So through a policy, you can say, certain types of files I don't want to enter my organization, files with certain types of content in them, for example, macros, don't let it in, or you can choose to sanitize, which is remove that types of functionality in a document, or if it's super critical that there's no impact to business continuity for a certain department, for a certain type of file and a certain type of content, you can choose to accept that risk and let it in. We also offer organizations something which is otherwise not possible. There's an understanding of the types of documents and the content within those documents which are being transferred in and out of your organization. So you can get some what we call threat intelligence on who are the senders, who are the receivers of certain types of document, and also what content lives within those documents that are being transferred around the networks.
So it sounds like there are many kind of parts to this that maybe companies wouldn't have been able to do before. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I would definitely say so, Ben. Yeah.
Now, we know that Gartner has picked out CDR as a best practice in one of its recent reports. How encouraging is that for a company that is kind of leading in this area?
Very much so. It's definitely exciting news for us. Gartner has a long track record of identifying emerging technologies and emerging best practices. So when they say that CDR is going to become a best practice over the next few years, that's really encouraging for us, not just for us, as a company, but for companies worldwide. In general, everyone's invested in greater security. And I think there's not much else out there that's proven to be as effective in dealing with malware as CDR has been. Glasswall, genuinely, using CDR technology are trying to make the world a safer place. So, the fact that Gartner's picked up on it and their proven track record means it's exciting for cyber security enthusiasts around the world.
Obviously, as threats become more sophisticated, how important is it that security infrastructures and how security becomes more sophisticated as well? And CDR is kind of an example of that, isn't it?
Definitely so. And I think, this is an important point to touch on. If you look at a technology like antivirus, which has been around for 40 years, it's very, very adept at stopping certain types of threats, but it can only stop things that it knows about. And as you said, threats are evolving continuously. There are now, kind of signatureless types of threats out there. And as the malware becomes more bespoke, CDR is even better positioned to stop against these types of threats, because it doesn't have that concept of bad things that it's looking for. It rebuilds a file to a state of known good. It requires a lot less, we have to update our solution as file specifications change, which is not too frequently. Whereas a definition-based mechanism like antivirus is constantly having to play catch up with the types of threats that are out there. So I think, like you said, as they become a bit smarter, and as the evolution of different types of threats continues to grow rapidly, CDR is even more critical in being established as part of the security chain within any organization.
No, that's great, Luke. As I said in the intro, there's an article on digitalbulletin.com authored by yourself, and a very good one, may I say, which goes obviously into a lot more detail on this. Maybe can you give the listener a bit more insight into what they can expect to find in that piece?
Yeah, of course. Some of it we've touched on, which is, what is CDR and why do companies need CDR? A few other interesting things that it covers the Gartner piece as well, and how Gartner kind of identifies it as becoming mainstream over the next few years. It also talks a little bit around collaboration within the industry. There's a number of CDR players who are more interested in building the market awareness than they are with competing with each other. So there's a lot of collaboration going on to kind of build market adoption, which is, again, not just important for us, but for everyone in the industry. And it talks a bit about the importance of business continuity when implementing security measures. So the high value that a company gets in allowing their staff to focus on their job and not have to worry about whether the documents they've received are safe to interact with. There's a huge value to that, and reduced cost in having an unobtrusive solution like Glasswall CDR in place, so that when a document arrives at a user, they don't have to worry about whether it's safe to open it or safe to run it or not. They can just go ahead and focus on doing their job.
And finally, Luke, really, let's throw it forward to the future. And it sounds like a pretty exciting time to be involved in this area of cybersecurity for sure. What do you think the future holds, not just for CDR, but for Glasswall as a company?
I believe that CDR, has to become a more known technology within the cybersecurity industry. When you speak to a lot of cybersecurity experts now, the majority don't know what content disarm reconstruction is. And I believe within a few years from now, it will be a very well-known segment of cyber, and a very important consideration to any security team when talking about the topic of document security. Going back to Gartner's prediction, I'm fully confident that their prediction of CDR becoming mainstream is definitely happening now as we speak. And as the next few years kind of unfold, I do expect it to become a mainstream consideration within cybersecurity. And my hope, obviously, for Glasswall is that we will remain a strong contender and a strong contributor to the driving adoption of CDR technology.
Thank you to Luke for giving us his insights there. And as I said, his thought leadership article is available both in the latest edition of the Digital Bulletin magazine and on digitalbulletin.com. Martin and Rom are still with me. And Martin, we want to bend your ear a bit more on all things Blue Prism, RPA, and automation, if that's okay. First of all, what's life like at Blue Prism at the moment? We know there's so much going on in this field, and Blue Prism is right kind of in the middle of it. It must be a kind of really busy but exciting time.
It's exactly that. It's busy and exciting. I think we're now at a stage of maturity in terms of the technology. 3, 4, 5 years ago, clients were asking, is this something that's a 5-minute wonder, or does RPA and extending that into intelligent automation, does it actually have a place in helping us achieve what we want to achieve? And I think we're over that now. And now almost every company is looking at what is my automation strategy to supplement all my other strategies. So we're seeing that. The other thing, I think, the difference that I'm seeing now is the conversations that we're having with our customers are not about what can I automate. They are about, I need to transform. What's the role of automation, intelligent automation in that? So it's a subtle difference, but it's kind of, before, say 2-3 years ago, many of the conversations were, I need to automate upwards and hopefully get some transformational outcome. Now it's very much the other. Transformation is something I am absolutely committed to do. What is the role of automation, and how can I best use automation to achieve those outcomes? So it's a very different set of conversations we're having now, and still very interesting and very challenging conversations. There's still a lot of barriers being broken, and a lot of new innovation that's coming out from that. But fascinating times, really super busy. We're in our quiet period, so I can't talk about numbers and all the rest of it. But we feel we're in a very strong position. Our business is built on the backs of our fantastic clients who are doing some incredible things. You heard about Telefónica, and there are many others. And also, working with our partners, the advisory firms and the systems integrators, and then the technology platforms, where we collaborate with AI vendors and machine learning vendors and so forth. There's so much happening, and it's just a very, very exciting time to be involved in it.
Rom, obviously we at Digital Bulletin, we cover a very broad kind of range of industries and technologies, but we keep coming back to automation, don't we? There's definitely a trend here. It appears like right now with automation transformations. That is a mouthful.
I think Martin's just summarised that very neatly. Is that automation is now considered a central cog in the wheel of cog in the wheel of transfer. I don't know what I'm coming, but you know what I mean. If you're going to build a transformation engine, then the fuel, the oxygen, as Martin calls it, it's
good save, Rob. Good save.
is automation. Yeah, I know. That was stretched to the point of actually painful. But no, the point is automation is it's a linchpin. It's difficult to imagine how you can change, particularly if you're a large organization, how you can change and transform fundamentally without automation, because the benefits of automation are so clear. And I suppose now, I don't know if this is true or not, but if you're sitting there and you're a CIO and you're going, well, I need to transform, let's do a whole bunch of this technology stuff and then try and automate processes as part of that, you're going to end up trying to retrofit an awful lot of stuff. You instantly build yourself this technical debt. So what people are doing is saying, well, no, automation is essential. Anything else we do, we need to make sure that that's going to be something we can apply and do in a relatively seamless way. The purpose is to simplify, so it has to be in there at the beginning, I guess. But yeah, no, it's it is, as you say, pretty much part of everything we write, more or less now.
It definitely is. Certainly from my perspective, it seems to be a topic I keep going back to in the work that I'm doing at the moment. Martin, on a final point though, this industry and the terminology around it, we are moving from, and this applies specifically to Prism, we are moving from RPA to kind of intelligent automation. And that is both kind of exciting and almost limitless in what can be achieved. Maybe try and kind of tell the listener what intelligent automation really kind of means and what the potential is.
Yeah, and you're right. I can't remember the last time I used the phrase RPA, although it might have been earlier in this bulletin. But by and large, we don't talk to clients about RPA. It's just a technology set that's part of a bigger capability, which is intelligent automation. Intelligent automation is the collaboration of if you like, digital automation plus AI, machine learning. You can almost imagine it as the digital worker has a body of arms and legs and will do whatever you tell it to do, but it doesn't think for itself, doesn't have a brain. You have to teach it what to do. And that's how you make RPA work, is you teach the digital worker what to do, when to do it, how to deal with exceptions and so forth. And it goes away and does it. But when you add to that, let's call it a dumb automation character, when you add to that skills, and those might be skills to read, skills to reason, and so those technologies of AI, machine learning, OCR, other capabilities, what you create is a character that has the ability to do things, to do many more things, again in a very structured, controlled way, with all of the controls around it. We're not into the fully sentient computer, but what you have is a much more powerful capability you can plug into your business, and use that to get more efficiency, to drive greater levels of automation, and so on. So that's really how to think of the intelligent digital worker. That's it, really.
Yeah. Well, Martin, it's been great to have you on. Thank you ever so much for joining us. I hope you enjoyed it.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Fantastic. And some real kind of true insights right from the middle of the industry right there for you, listener. As usual, Rom, thanks to you as well for your insights from outside of the industry.
Thanks me to you as well.
Thank you. And for you too, listener, a big thanks. And some advice to go and read Tech for Good, issue 4, which hit the virtual shelves last week. And of course, to refer back to digitalbulletin.com, where you can find a range of news and views from the world of enterprise tech. As for the pod, we'll catch you next month. Bye-bye.
That was the Digital Bulletin podcast, brought to you by Bulletin Media. Listen and subscribe to a range of podcasts on Spotify, Apple Podcasts and Stitcher. Plug in for news, features and case studies on the very latest in enterprise technology and digital transformation.